Final bit. This is a McKinsey slide. How many people here provide personalisation on their client site, on their sites? Okay, that's probably representative. I find chief execs are more interested in can we do it, and then the reality is when you get down into a business, it's actually quite hard. So if you just follow through the percentages of experimentation, understanding who somebody is and put in the segment and then personalise against it, I think really you see a very small percentage of the market doing it because it's not easy. And I've got a little slide at the end that says, here's your ideal team in a business. And you'll see something that's huge in terms of a team that should exist just to deliver personal experiences. Measure Camp's about analytics. I think really for me, what Dynamic Yield is seen to start off doing is the top right. It's about browse. Real-time decisions on what somebody's doing on the site. But without the rest of the things below the waterline, you don't get a good grasp of what's happening, why it's happening, and there's then a complex integration required. So that's it in terms of generals. I'll just talk specifically about how do AirHelp do things. And this really, to me, is just a template to think about. The realities of how do you affect and change your website? How did AirHelp do it? And you can read from the language on the slide. AirHelp's very much a business that are about, we're a digital disruptor. We want to do things efficiently. They're a small business, but it is, you can feel the language, breaking windows, knocking down doors, and lighting fires. So I'm just going to talk about the business quickly, what they did. I'll talk a little bit about who they saw and wanted to emulate, what are the tactics they went through, and then questions. Has anyone used AirHelp? I should have done twice. If you're over 4 hours late, the AirHelp service will be something that any of us can use to then recover our repayment from an airline that failed to deliver a service. So it's hugely valuable if, for us as consumers of airlines, and we're late, they're there to make it easy to recover your money. So what you'll pick up is it's a Berlin-based business. There's a huge volume of traffic that they're generating because, you know, they've got 5 million passengers that have reclaimed money using the AirHelp service. So 200 million in compensation. It's a big business getting a lot bigger. And as you can guess, a lot of what they do is about partnership. So they'll work with the Thomas Cooks, the lastminute.coms, because these people don't care if we reclaim money for a late plane. So they've got numbers of ways of getting information. So growth. The majority of the AirHelp staff have worked in other businesses and have run businesses before. They looked at a whole raft of different businesses. And I don't know if anyone's aware of any of the stories. I'll just take you through a couple as to how some of these businesses got to where they are. I think Airbnb is probably the one that fascinates me most. So how did Dropbox do it? I mean, I'm a Dropbox user. Get free space, invite other people. So there's a social aspect to how Dropbox did it. Reddit actually cheated. Fake posts for like it. Airbnb started in California by basically going to people that were renting houses on Craigslist and going, Airbnb, we can rent your house out, we can let you sort of sell it on a nightly basis, and that's really where their journey started. So, again, I'm assuming a large number of people in here have used Airbnb like myself. It's easy. Well, how did they get started? They had some interesting ways of doing it. So here's the Craigslist sort of type adverts that Airbnb started off sending. And it didn't take a lot of effort. If you're on Craigslist, send somebody off this. Will you get it? Is it something that you want? So from an AirHelp perspective, it's about innovation and it's creativity. And really, if you don't do it, somebody else will. Culture. I'm intrigued that in Germany they have a very creative business, and in the DNA you're seeing that the head of products there going, the data's the key, analytical intuition, and then an energy to go and make things happen. So really, from a fire perspective, really go and drive things, change what and how you're going to do things to make things happen. It's interesting with people reading. And so Reddit maybe weren't this, but do everything you can. And what I'll now do is talk about what were the things that AirHelp did, given they've had their own businesses, given they're entrepreneurs, what were they going to do? Does anyone else as a business have this in their DNA, experiment everywhere? Because that really is what I'd always talk about. I've seen customers through experimentation have put about 20% uplift in 3 months on revenues. And it's through experimentation. And you need a level of intelligence, you need the data to support it. Typically what this is all about is the micro conversions. Looking at a site and how does that journey work and where are the things that are going wrong. And if we've got a normal journey that's starting off with homepage to product list to product detail to basket, we're bothered about getting through and actually keeping somebody on the site as long as possible through to the basket. But what AirHelp are trying to understand is what are the bits that we didn't do well, and let's affect change where it's needed. So here's a quick picture of last year for them. And I was horrified when I saw these stats. It kind of feels like how much wasted effort was there. If they've planned and delivered 70 tests and only 10 of them worked, you know, the maths isn't quite right. But it's basically there that's saying we didn't do a lot of tests that produced positive results. So there is some of this that's about a culture of aggregated marginal gain. We do 10 things. If 2 of them are working, we've got 2 things. But you always learn. This almost feels counterintuitive to me and where I was 2 years ago. More steps in a funnel, and I'll talk about that, actually helped with one of the tests that they did. And I think that's an interesting one. Clarity. Do we understand our user well enough? You need to understand the user and the user behaviour. She's not in here, so I'll talk about it. There's Haymarketer here. I'm buying a new car at the moment, and I used one of her publications' websites. And I was able to say to her, here's a struggle I had. It's not giving me what I want. And actually I tried 3 times. I'll give you some sort of results back from a global brand. Global brand site had some real issues, and they didn't know what was going wrong on their site, but they kept on pushing a message of product, and the customer basically wanted to know about brand. And so we start analysing a site, and we can see here are the things that will change to make it work. Back to AirHelp. Showing the compensation amount. So for us to be told there's money to be saved, we'll give you this back. Actually, the experiment showed that didn't produce positive results. So what did work? So as we've described, tests that added more steps. That actually worked. People will give you your email early. And, you know, as we've said, hiding compensation. So for AirHelp and their experiments, they were doing an awful lot. But if this is seen as A/B tests, well, actually, their message is, we don't want to do A/B tests. Now, I'm going to ask you a question again. I think some of this is resonating. Has anyone had a test that took them over 30 man days to build? So I'm in the industry, but I've seen tests of over 30 man days. So how much effort have we gone to build experimentation into our site? And basically it takes huge amounts of effort. So this is where AirHelp's whole ethos is, we'll mock test. And I'll give you some examples. Rather than spend, and if there's an amount of time to build a test and a new experiment on the site, and then it gets QA'd, and then it gets released, and all the manpower around that 30 man days, it's huge amounts of effort. So what did AirTest do? They basically said, if we test it with some cheeky ways of doing it, and then we know somebody's interested, then we'll build it. So what were the examples? Well, a mock test, what is it? Have people heard of mock testing before? No? Good. I mean, really what this is about is faking things on your site, or doing something quick and easy to prove a principle. And we'll come back, for instance, to how many steps to check out in a basket, the most dangerous place to do anything. Well, here's an example of the site. On their site, if there is something that says, here are the dates, and here's where you want to come in, and obviously it's a fake given what the cost is, what they were basically seeing is, on the AirHelp site, the dates seemed like they were fixed, and they were seeing a huge bounce. So what did they do? Well, rather than an A/B test of adding a date module, it's back-end systems, it's complexity. So rather than go through that complexity, what's the fire truck? Johnny is American. What was the approach they took? Well, they just put a little banner up that said edit dates. And they decided a proportion of their traffic, and basically all that was a back button. It's a banner, it acted like a back button, and do you know what? Oh, no, that's going to the next one. Basically, they proved that people did want to. I think there were around 70% of people were pressing that edit date button. So in terms of a journey, people had got to a point and said, all right, AirHelp are going, right, you're here. And the customers go, no, we don't, we've got to change things. So that proved it would work.
Sorry, can I ask, so what did they show the users when they ran the mock test?
So the mock test was basically that edit date. So that actually wasn't giving them a full facility on that page. So ideally, when you built this, the edit dates will be a little pop-up window, it'll link back to the booking engine, and it will have all the functionality for somebody to change the dates. But rather than do the full, proper experiment and then run it, all they did was put a back button. But rather than call it a back button, they said edit date. So in the mock test, they knew there was a user behavior where they wanted to change the dates that they were going to be applying to. Because people get it wrong. So the next one was about the money that we're just going into. Get more cash. Share this as a service. What can we do? Or, no, I'm not interested. Well, they basically just said, rather than build anything, the feature wasn't delivered. It wasn't created. They just said, oh, right, we're not quite ready. But they were seeing a level of response on the website, a proportion of traffic, that they then knew people are interested in this. Now, from a dynamic yield standpoint, there's a segment of and a new audience that we want to possibly create where people are happy to share friends. So that if we know somebody's happy to share friends, if they come back to the site, well, we'll know that's there and we'll have something in the user experience that lets them share again. Because 2 months later, things could have changed. So what are the tactics? Effort doesn't equal impact. Again, just some simple things. If we put a red dot on the site, now I talk about CRO as being the coloured button testing approach, because changing button colours, it does make a difference, but it's small gains. However, what does the red dot do? And what they proved just by putting a red dot into a certain area of the user experience, they were getting huge uplifts in people engaging on the site, on the click-through, and with that journey, what the conversion rate was. So they didn't even need to mock test this. They just, with the user experience, created a difference by putting the red dot in to guide people's eyes and have them see where do you want to do something next. Great, simple. So the final one, it's about what are we doing on flights and compensation values. Well, what we've got put on here, they're talking about exactly how much money they've saved. They're providing the reinforcement about the value and how many people have benefited. So rather than just going to what was your flight, they're driving an interest with the how much have they saved. The control didn't have this, and do people talk about statistical significance? I hate doing it on a Friday afternoon. Stat-sig is the easier way to say it, and you don't stumble over your words. And when you know it's a problem, it's even harder not to stumble over statistical significance. But here's just a simple example of the change in experiment. No hints was the control. Put this on in terms of the counter as to how much has been saved by their clients, and they saw a 10% uplift. Statistical significance from that as a test. So what type of data do you have to have for tests? Well, basically the message is go and do it as quick as possible, get things out. But this is how the customer funnel ideally worked they want people's travel documents on the AirHelp service. But do you know what? They were creating, they knew they were, to get all the documents to make their life easier. What was the drop-off? They didn't have to have them. So, we'll press buttons. So basically, what they've done is created sort of a second sort of leg that says, if you can upload your documents, great. If you don't, well, we can still process your inquiry. So, what was that? Well, the change was, on the left you'll see the claim's been submitted, and then you can do something. Or on the right, go to put your boarding pass or e-ticket in so they know who you were on a flight specifically, rather than having to go to the trouble of finding that Martin was on the flight to Berlin on this date. And again, they didn't lose traffic. If you didn't want to do it, that's fine. If not, go ahead. And fundamentally, they gave an option and they actually got people, rather than demanding it, they got 60% more documents, because people were then going, I don't have to, but I'll go and look, versus a concept of I've got to go and find a document and I can't be bothered. And people check out the process. So hopefully what you see is some simple things. This is my example of more steps. Amazon Pay, the Amazon payment service, I just looked at, and I have a lot of businesses talk to me and say, Martin, we want to have one-page checkout. We need that because it will simplify, churn, dropout, whatever you want to call it. People will be happier, they know what they need to do. Well, fine. There was as much information as you can on passenger details, but on the right, it was more steps, but it was one question per step. So what they were doing was, they were starting off with an email, they were taking somebody through a journey to get the questions answered that they needed to retrieve or to pull in people's card details. So they made it obvious, a step at a time, and actually, again, statistical significance showed a 15% uplift versus the one page does most of your data. Now that's not going to work for everyone, but in the AirHelp example, what they were able to do is get big improvements in traffic. So what's the summary? Well, for the AirHelp business, they don't want to build A/B tests. Until the mock test, until they've found a simple way of proof, a change is going to have an impact. Let's not go to the effort. As it says there, effort and impact don't mean the same. And then this doesn't feel culturally right in Britain. It feels even less right in Germany. But you know, it's about empowering the team. Everyone in AirHelp can come forward with ideas, and everyone's then going to be thinking about what's the level of effort, what's the level of impact. So the more we can do with low impact, the less we do with low impact, high effort, the more we do with high impact, low effort, the better. But people are then being encouraged to bring forward the ideas and understand in their experimentation culture with lots of fire, what do we do? This is a dynamic yield slide that we pulled together in conjunction with the McKinsey teams. I don't know if anyone has got even close to it. I've not seen this other than there's a fashion business in London and there's one outside of in the north that I know have something close to this. But does anyone have a team of people even close to this for the customer experience and personalisation? I'm assuming not. And the bit about partners that we work with, typically without a lot of these services, we're compromising our ability to build personalisation in. Everyone I talk to at an exec level tends to agree they want to have a site with personalisation and things that work. But you look at all the skills required and it's not easy. But just draw your sort of sort of attention to the top left. An executive will drive the business and their interest in doing something. The exec have got to agree to it, and you actually want their involvement because they'll be touching so many bits of your business. So for me, I'm typically taking this in as part of a discussion to any business to say, where are you in terms of the skills required? One of the challenges of personalisation is how many people have just got content coming out of their ears and they've got data warehouses full of it. Typically that's not the case. So we start personalising, and who's going to build the content? Where's the creative that we can bring in to show the different experiences? The other bits tend to be how coordinated is your business to get the development, front end, back end, integration. So those are the bits that are difficult. Okay, so that's all I wanted to say today. Are there any questions?
For the mock tests, what kind of sample range normally run?
Johnny's message to me typically go between sort of 3, 4, 5% to 20. So you're not damaging your main traffic. So what the mock test is all about is just, it's not about statistical significance, it's about get a feel that this is a worthwhile change. So, you know, again, this is very much a CRO on steroids sort of tool. I'm seeing that it's about making efficient use of scarce resource, and it's about prioritisation. I mean, with the global brand I was referring to earlier, I mean, they as a brand didn't have any people in their CRO team. They just outsourced it. So how's that team of people doing the site experimentation meant to know what the business wants to do? It doesn't work. And so again, we'll talk about process and partners to make things go together. Okay, well, thank you very much.